If I come in and I say, hey, I am not using insurance, will I get a completely different bill, A, and will I get completely different treatment?
Yes. And yes, insurance is for profit.
It's like, hey, I'm going to text message over to my buddy, hey, we got this new drug coming through.
The craziest one I ever saw, there was a drug that was made specifically for opioid-induced constipation.
A healthy population is not a profitable population.
Nothing in our society functions this way except medicine.
Welcome back to the Alpha Hour podcast, where a couple of betas try to pretend like we're alpha.
We were chit-chatting a couple months ago about medicine and kind of the intricacies and how it works, and I realized like neither one of you really had any clue.
No clue. So, because we should state, first of all, you worked in the medical...
I worked in it for 13 years.
As a physician's
physician
assistant. PA.
So, yeah, it in things that I just took for granted as like common knowledge because it was just something I did every day. And I remember we talked and you guys were like really almost like, it does what? Like, how's that work? Like, I just remember thinking like, yeah, like this may not be something that everybody's wildly aware of.
No, and there's different levels to it. Like one level is patient, doctor, or PA interaction. Another level is insurance. So like how you interact as a medical professional with insurance that we have no idea about, right? We just go in and say, hey, here's our problem, fix it.
Yeah, I think that is the one that people, because at least you get to see the interaction between a provider and a patient, but people don't get to see the other side, which is the insurance stuff, because it is crazy.
And you don't, as a medical professional, you don't have anything to do with pricing either, do you? So no. If I say, hey, I hurt my arm, give me a quote before I come in. No. You can't even tell me, even if you wanted to.
I honestly, it varies so wildly based on your insurer. And the reality is we'll charge, let's just say you charge $1,000. One insurance company will pay you $600, one will pay you $200, one will pay you $450. It's just, it truly is. There's no rhyme or reason. It's one of my biggest knocks against medicine in general has always been that it's like we can't pick a lane. It's like we decided to do insurance, which is fine, but then you had federal insurance, you had all these other things that basically turned it into socialism. Yeah, and you don't know the price. And if you would have known the price, then you'd have capitalism. And I think that that's the only way to drive down cost. If you
capitalism?
Right. Like, if you actually knew, let's just say it was like Amazon. You had 5 providers you could look up on the computer screen, and there was reviews and costs next to them. You could actually make an educated decision. Now it's like you look them up, and you have reviews that they've basically self-populated themselves, and you don't know what it costs, you don't know the quality, you don't know anything about what you're getting. The product is literally dark to you. You don't know. And so it could cost whatever it costs. You don't know if the person's good, and you end up with a bad product, where if you went with a different model where it was truly capitalism, and maybe you do that by like, hey, you have an injury and your insurance company gives you money to go use or something. I don't know. Because the problem is the cat's kind of out of the bag. And it's so expensive. Like, you look at a TV from 20 years ago. It was a very expensive item, or a computer. These things have come down in cost with time, and not risen with inflation, not getting worse. Healthcare costs have risen astronomically versus what they were 20, 30 years ago. So you could make the argument that the lack of any competition makes the pricing a lot worse. But that's the problem. It's like, then the cat's out of the bag. Like, how do you fix that now? It's either like, I think it's like you either go no insurance or you go all like government insurance.
Like Canada, and does Europe have that?
Most developed nations. But again, I see problems with that too.
Well, yeah, I've heard that people in Canada, they want to go into the doctor's office to get something looked at. They're not going to get in there for 2 months, is what I hear.
Even beyond the waiting period, it's just the control that the insurer has over it. So basically, if there's one person telling you what you can do, so you're the provider. Somebody comes in, I did orthopedics, so we'll just say this person has a torn ACL. I am not allowed to do certain things right away, like, because they won't pay for it.
Insurance won't pay for it.
Insurance won't pay for it.
Now, okay, then tell me this. If I come in with that same issue and I say, hey, because I've thought about doing this, I am not using insurance. Will I get a completely will I get a completely different bill, A?
Yes.
And will I get completely different treatment, B?
Yes, and yes, because number one, you could almost negotiate your own price
if you're paying for it on your own.
Yeah, I mean, there's a way where you could call one of the financial people and say, hey, I have $800 I want to pay for an MRI. Okay. Okay. They may try and charge you $4,000, but that's the problem. If you had any clue what insurance actually pays, you could probably arrange it well. And then 2, you could skip the middleman. So I'm not going for approval for surgery. I'm not going for approval for an MRI, because a lot of these things, anything that costs more than an office visit, you basically have to go to insurance and say, pretty please, can I perform this thing that's necessary? And they'll be like, well, how do you know it's necessary? In your note here, you missed it. You didn't say anything about this thing or that thing. And you'll have to then call in and do a review with these people. And then sometimes they'll still deny it.
Quick shout out to the sponsor of this video, Fully Loaded Tobacco-Free Chew. Check out the description of this video or the show notes to get 20% off your next order.
That was the most intriguing part to me, was the fact that, like, the physician, if you have a good doctor that's kind of doing the diagnosis on you, whatever it might be, if it's writing you a prescription, or how educated they have to be, and then like these key words to ultimately state in this like assessment of the patient per se, whether or not it's a prescription or a surgery that's being required. It's like, geez almighty. Like, so the doctor might know what's best for you, but they also have to know the lingo and like all this like talk and like key words to ultimately get you the proper whatever it is that you need. Well, the insurance to get the approval. And it's like, oh my God. Yeah. That's what was so. And then when you get into the drugs and whatnot, and like how some have a monopoly, it's like, hey, this drug, it's new on the market, and there's not whatever, the copycats out there. What are they, those guys called? The generic drugs and whatnot. So it's like, geez, a lot of the times you're going to the doctor and you might not get the best medication. No. You might not get the best prescription that will ultimately overcome and be the best remedy. That's what it was like.
You're going to get put into a box. So your diagnosis is going to put you into a box. So let's just say you have Crohn's disease. You walk in with Crohn's disease. You're going to start with this medication. And that medication is going to be generic and cheap. If that doesn't work, you move to the next medication. You move to the next medication. You move to the next medication. And it's all already set up in these care pathways. Your doctor, you may walk in there and they may look at you and say, I've seen this 10,000 times. This person is not going to respond to 1, 2, 3 treatment. They're only going to respond to 4. They cannot do that. You have to suffer through the other treatments because insurance will never let you skip. So new drugs are it's why advancement in medicine is tricky outside the surgical realm, because you can't just start using new drugs because they won't freaking pay for them, and they're so stinking expensive.
Did you run into a lot where you were trying to get somebody, let's say they're coming back to you and being like, dude, I still have pain or whatever it might be, and obviously you're going to give them healthier ways to overcome that, whether or not it's exercise, whatever, but like, did they like monitor like the dosages, like if you were to be like 2 a day or 2 pills, like do they actually like fight back on that stuff so they take as little as possible so that they're not having to cover as much, or is that not so much it?
It's not so much it, because most of the time the dosage is the dosage. Okay. So a lot of times it's, just say it's ibuprofen. So it's 800 milligrams 3 times a day
and
is needed.
Pharmaceutical company would ultimately dictate that?
Yeah, well, that is just what it was tested at. So if you're using an on-label drug, it's going to be at said dosage. And they're not going to really have a ton of variation there, and you could tell them to take it differently, but they're only going to approve X amount of pills. But that really isn't that's not a big problem. The problem is you can't get the medication you want.
I'm trying to think of other industries where this would happen. Like, you pay for your car insurance. If you get in a wreck, it would be like the insurance company being like, oh man, they need a new front end. Let's say you drive a Tesla, and all of a sudden they're being like, well, that's like expensive. Let's, instead of that fuel injection pump that Tesla actually manufactured, let's grab this whatever Ford one and stuff it in there because it's cheaper for us to cover that one, even though it's not the appropriate fuel pump that's needed. Well, that made no sense because there's no fuel in
yeah, we're talking about electric and engine, but the idea is still there. No, nothing
like
works
wild.
like this.
Like, I'm trying to think of any other like industry where you pay for insurance, like I guess your house or whatever it might be, if anything happens and it's not the appropriate part or piece or matching paint or whatever it might be, but this isn't best for your body.
That's the thing. It's appropriate according to their protocol, but that's what I'm saying. You as a provider do not get to make a decision. So once you have a diagnosis, essentially your treatment is the exact same as the person next to you, despite the fact that you may be 50 pounds lighter. They may have a vitamin D deficiency. You don't. You may be a vegan. They may not. They don't look at you as a person. They look at you as a diagnosis, and they treat the diagnosis, and that diagnosis is treated by a protocol that is not designed by the doctor. It is designed by best practices from the insurance company. And then even higher than that is the insurance company is Medicare, Medicaid, which is the largest insurer in the United States. So those are the ones that are dictating even further to the other insurance companies. So it's crazy. I mean, it really is that it's so many layers of crap and so much bureaucracy, even in the hospital systems. I mean, if you go look at like Cleveland Clinic, there's going to be way more people working outside of clinical practice than in it. It's just an inefficient model. You're going to have 4 managers for every provider. That's how much layers of bureaucracy there are. You're going to have people that have to deal with insurance companies all day, get the approvals all day, do these things. It's a bad model, and that's why it's so stinking expensive.
So, I mean, are you able, as a medical professional, are you able to tell the patient, hey, just so you know, we're going to try this drug, and it might not work. So if it doesn't work, we're going to try something else. And do you give them a heads up, or does it make sense, or are you allowed to give them a heads up?
No, yeah. I mean, there's nothing, at least not yet, preventing you. I mean, like California just passed a bill that you're not allowed to give medical misinformation. You could lose your license. So, but I don't know what that even qualifies as. But no, you could have that conversation. But at the same time, it's not like that drug never works. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So the first line treatment for osteoarthritis is Tylenol. Like, that's what you're supposed to give somebody the first time they walk in and they have knee pain. You're supposed to say, all right, take Tylenol. Tylenol works. It does eliminate pain for some people, but like if I looked at someone and they had severe bone-on-bone knee arthritis and they're 75 years old and we know where this is going. I can put them through the ringer for 2 years, or I can inject them with cortisone, see if it works. If it doesn't work, we replace their joint. Like,
God, that's just so much wasted time
effort,
and money.
Money, everything. Because especially when you know where it goes. And you develop that just by seeing the pattern over and over and over. And a lot of these specialists, it's all they do. So 30 times a day, somebody walks in with the exact same problem. They've seen this enough. They know how to recognize that pattern, and they don't really need anybody telling them what to do. They could just make the best decision for the patient at that time, but they're not allowed to.
Okay, so tell me this. Years ago, I came to you and I said, I have an issue with right here in my hand. Do you remember this?
Yep.
And I said, Al, what can I do? If I pay you outside of, the normal insurance way, path, I said, okay, what can I do? You said cortisone. Now, if I would have came into you as a normal patient with regular insurance, would you have been able
It's not first line treatment.
That's what I mean. No. So that's messed up because that cortisone shot fixed everything immediately.
Yeah, it's gone. Right.
But if I was a normal patient,
right,
you would have had to have gone through the normal protocols of...
Yeah, you'd have probably done, wrist splinting, hand therapy. You'd have done all that stuff. And then you just sat there and in 6 months, you've been like, hey, this still hurts.
Yeah.
And I'd have been like, well, let's inject it.
Yeah, because I didn't go through insurance and you knew what you could give me is like, okay, do this.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
But that's how it works. And it's not just orthopedic. It is across the board. When you look at, like, primary care is one where it's crazy because they put so little money in it and you have no ability to do anything. Like, they can order yearly labs. So especially for like guys like us and their, we could use lab work. We could use testosterone workups. We could use like a lot of different things. Like, they're going to pay for a blood count and they're going to pay for cholesterol. That's all they're going to pay for. If you want to do other things, you can, but you're definitely not going to get through insurance.
Yeah, I'm going to be getting a full blood panel done, and I'm spending out of pocket. I'm going to spend like $900 for it to get looked at, and this is literally everything, the best of the best, and I'm not using insurance because I know if I go to my doctor and say, hey, I want to get all of my blood work done, they're not going to give me everything that I'm going to that I'm looking for, I should say, because I just want to get an idea of my general health at this point. I feel perfectly fine, but I want to know, okay, what do things look like right now when I'm still fairly young and healthy?
Establish a baseline.
Yes, and what is it going to look like in 10 years or 5 years when I do it? If I start feeling a little wonky,
that would be the right way to do it, because then you'd have yearly baseline lab work on various kind of data points where you can work off of. Hey, man, your vitamin D was adequate when you were 38. Now you're down to 41. You're at 41 now, and now you're way down. Let's get that back up. That you know what it is.
Yes, it's like what happened, like something happened.
Because the other thing is, it's not like everyone's lab work is the same. There's a normal range, but for me, let's just say like my hemoglobin, mine might be 13, and that might be acceptable for me, but maybe yours is 16. And when you see it drop from 16 to 13, that's a big drop for you. But for me, it's just normal. Like, everyone's different, and if you don't do these things and you don't have a maintenance schedule, then you don't know what that is. It's like regular car maintenance. If you change your oil every 5,000 miles, your car is going to do better than if you don't change it for 25,000. Then you walk into the mechanic, you're like, "Hey, man, fix this shit." Like, no, you need to do maintenance. But there's a reason they don't do maintenance. They don't want to pay for it. When you actually think about it, it would make sense for them to say, "Hey, we're going to have this patient for life. I'm the insurance company. I have patient A, patient B. It does make sense for me to say, for both of these patients, I would like to be as preventative as possible." And that would include, probably free gym, free vitamins, these kinds of things, free supplements, things to keep them healthy, regular lab work, regular checkups. That would make sense. The problem is patient A and B aren't going to be with me forever. The likelihood is they're going to switch insurance companies. So what I'd like to do, if I'm trying to make money, is I'm trying to kind of kick the can down the road until patient A and B are with a different insurance company.
Oh, I see.
And then when someone else comes to me, so I'm Med Mutual, I'd like those two to do all the expensive shit later, preferably when they're on Medicare, because then me and my boys ain't ever going to have to pay for them. So I'd like to kick it down to the road till they're 65. That's perfect. And then when I bring people in, I want them to already be identified as the problems they have, so I can charge them more up front.
Yeah, that's messed up.
That's how it works.
And I know that we all want to say that drug companies are bad, and I think they are to an extent, but it seems like the group that's even worse are insurance companies.
Yeah.
Like, they're almost more powerful.
They're not providing a service, really. They're a middleman.
But they're almost more powerful than
way more.
The drug companies.
Way more,
right?
Yeah, because they can tell the drug companies, like, "F you, we're not paying for your drug."
Yeah.
No, they have way more power, and drug companies have their problems. I mean, 100%.
Yeah, that's why.
There's a reason they yank a ton of drugs all the time. It's because their testing and all that is basically done by them, and it's filtered results, and it's not good science sometimes. And that's why these drugs get on the market and they kill people. But they also do make drugs that are good. I mean, they've made some drugs that are like, you save people's lives, and you've made people's lives better. Insurance companies don't do that. They're the middleman. You're paying them. They're putting the money in a pool, and then they're taking it and doling it out as little as possible and keeping as much for themselves as they can. They're a middleman. They're a drug dealer. They're like the neighborhood drug dealer that you go buy some weed off of.
It is like a good topic though, to just what is the better way? Because you want capitalism, you want these drugs. I mean, it's how we've got to the point where we are in medicine. It's trial and error. So you need innovation. You need people to keep pushing the envelope to be able to come up with new drugs.
Yeah.
But it's like, we got to do it the safe way. When these drugs hit the market, they got to be perfectly clean. It's like, well, how do you get there ever without some level of error to prove that that's not the best course for us to take? Like this, we identified the issue. Now let's course correct. I mean, that's medicine in general since the beginning of humankind. At the same time, the insurance companies, you can't have a complete monopoly where the drug companies are also the insurers and dictate the price in a sense.
No, you wouldn't want that.
They could just fix the game that way. So you have to, and then the physicians, you don't want them completely in bed with one or the other.
No,
you need them.
And it
as
used
a
to be
separate
that
entity.
too.
I'm trying to think of a better way to go about it, but you almost need those three operating independently so that they don't just have a complete monopoly and dictate all healthcare in general.
It's tricky. I think like I said, I think the cat's out of the bag. It's like you have to go all one way or all the other. Right now we're this weird hybrid where you have some people that are just paying nothing and putting nothing in the game, and you have other people that are paying out the ass for insurance, and then you have some people that pay cash. So it's like you just have way too many things going on that it's hard to regulate. I mean, in all reality, if I was like gonna recommend things for someone our age, I would be like, get the lowest level insurance you can that's essentially for emergencies, and pay it as little as possible, highest deductible. You might have to pay $15,000 if you get in a car wreck, but that's what it is.
Yeah, that's so on my YouTube channel, I promote a high deductible health plan because you can get an HSA with it, a health savings account where you can invest the money.
Yeah.
And I talk about that. A lot of people don't need, or they look at what are they going to pay every month, right? That's what they're worried about, and what's going to be their out of pocket.
Right.
So when they hear high deductible health plan, they're like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it because if I have an accident and I got to pay $7,000 out of pocket, that sounds bad. But in reality,
Add that money up.
yes, it's probably the best route to go is to have that lower monthly payment with a higher deductible for most people.
And then someone like you who's doing something like that, then you can go use that money to pay cash for higher quality medical service. I mean, that's probably the best current way to do it, because the reality is if you actually get really sick, the problem is it's so insanely expensive to get medical treatment. So say you spend a week in the hospital. I mean, your bill's going to be, and you had surgery, like your bill's going to be astronomical. Hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Could I say
Which is a problem, but that's the reality of it currently.
Could I say I don't want to stay in the hospital for these nights you're telling me to? Like, give me my treatment and then let me go home.
Yes.
Like, as a provider, as a professional or healthcare professional, you guys might not recommend it, but you might be like, okay, we can't do anything about that. You want to go home?
Yeah, no, you can sign yourself out against medical advice. But, you know, let's just say you got in a car wreck. Just something traumatic happened. You got in a car wreck, you broke your leg and you broke your arm, and you're unconscious. Like, you're not going to go home that night.
You have to. Yeah, you got to.
You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna be there for a couple days, and so it's like, yes, you can do whatever you want, and someone could sign you out. But there at some point in most of our lives, we'll be in the hospital for something, and so that's where it's like, yeah, you need something, and there is an unforeseen aspect to this. But yeah, it's either that or you go with like an entirely socialist model.
So what I'm realizing is that a healthy population is not a profitable population.
Nope.
From a drug standpoint,
No.
drug provider and insurance provider.
No.
It's just not, we want to say that we want to get people healthy, but the system is not set up to get people healthy. It's almost like these defense companies. They make their money off of war.
Yeah.
So they want war in one way or another.
Yeah, if there's no war, they don't make any money.
Yeah. And if their profits aren't increasing, shareholders are going to be pissed. Even if I just saw Google, they had their profitability or revenues increased by 5%. I don't know if it was on the quarter. And people were pissed, and I'm thinking to myself, people, 5% is good.
And you've kind of like
You know what I mean?
I mean, how much more can you do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's insane. It's like we always have to be, these companies have to be more and more
It's always
profitable.
growth,
And if you're
growth,
not,
growth.
okay, we grew by 1%. Okay, that's just what it was this year. Not a big deal. The stock price is going to take a hit, but people just get pissed and they get dinged for it. But I don't think that's always a bad thing, right? And that's one of the issues with these all of these groups, if you will, healthcare, defense, anything. It's like, I don't know.
Well,
the system.
yeah.
It's the system, right?
Insurance is for profit. A lot of the hospitals are not profit, but all that means is they're not taxed. They're still trying to make money.
Yeah.
I mean, what industry are it's like not about profit?
Yeah.
I mean, if we were all healthier, we would just have different industries like that would be a lot bigger. You would have gyms and healthcare and outdoor recreation and healthy foods, organic foods. All of those would be skyrocketing, and you'd see lower potato chips and your sugar pop and your whatever else. I mean, it would just be a completely different world. And then pharmaceutical companies wouldn't be as profitable just because we wouldn't need as
wouldn't
many
be as
fucking drugs
necessary.
getting pumped into us to help alleviate knee pains and whatnot because we got obesity through the roof and whatnot. So how can we make the world more healthier than dive into more gyms and healthy foods and vitamins? That's our ticket.
I think it's truly, it's like there's a lot of people, it would always blow my mind. A lot of people just don't know. Like, I don't think it's common knowledge. Like, the best thing the government could do, and they had a real opportunity. They had everyone's attention for a long time with that COVID crap. But, like, they could have came out and been like, guys, this is an opportunity for us to, like, focus on improving our health as a nation. And that includes, like, all the money they spent. Think if they spent all that money on universal supplementation and gym membership and, you know, whatever it was going to be. Like, there's a way to spend that money instead of sending it to a bunch of businesses that really didn't need it. You know, I think, like, the Lakers got, like, a few $1 million. It's like, there's so many things that they just, and how much of that money was just fraudulent.
Are you talking about the stimulus money and
The
whatnot?
PPP, those loans and stuff, they said, like, over 50% was fraud. It's like, you could have used some of that funds, or you could have never used it and we wouldn't have such inflation, but you could have used some of that for productive means and said, like, a real conversation about national health and saying, like, hey, these are factors that are important when it comes to this virus in particular, you know, obesity, vitamin D levels, these sorts of things. They could have had that conversation. It was a missed opportunity, and that would help everyone. The problem is, who it wouldn't help is the pharmaceutical companies who basically run the FDA. And that's the majority of the FDA's budget is pharmaceutical companies. It's crazy.
And the people that leave those FDA jobs, where do they go work? Yeah.
It's a revolving door.
Blows my mind.
It's a revolving door. It's sick.
But if you think about it, I mean, yes, it's sick, but you got to on the other hand, those individuals who work at the FDA, when they leave the FDA, what is their specialty? It is in that health industry, right?
No, so they're going to go and they're going to be the liaison to the FDA for Merck.
Well, that's what they know. It's not like they're going to go work it in the supply chain field or something like that, right?
No, I don't expect them to go dig ditches, but
but
maybe we, like, do something where you say, like, and I remember Trump, like, proposed this at the beginning, but something where you say, like, hey, after you leave a government job, you're not allowed to lobby for 3 years.
Yeah,
something like that, like, where it's like, hey, going into this, you know, this isn't just your golden ticket after you get out of government. It's like, hey, sorry, like, if you want to go serve your country, you're going to do that, and you may not financially benefit immediately.
Yeah.
Like, something where there's just a little barrier to entry where you're not just trying to steal from the American people. It'd be all right.
Like, if I was a part of the pharmaceutical arena and whatever, CEO of Pfizer, whatever it might be, who do you want to cherry pick? People that left the FDA, one, they can give you insider trading, like what do they look for?
And they know everyone.
And then they know everyone,
Yes.
So it's like, hey, I'm going to shoot a text message over to my buddy, hey, we got this new drug coming through.
Yeah, hey, wink, wink.
It's so
Results
easy
look good.
for, like, add more layers of corruption, like, with that. Because, any industry within the FDA, if you're talking foods, drinks, tobacco, whatever it might be, the same shit's going on where they just flip-flop in between.
Yes.
Working for the Fortune 500 company, whatever it might be, in whatever industry, and then going back and forth between the FDA. And you just become more valuable the more you go back and forth because you've got that much more knowledge on both sides. Because then the FDA, the government job, I don't know what their salaries cap out. But, hey, you just left XYZ, come over here. Let us know what's really going on in the R&D field or whatever it might be.
So I think what it comes down to is self-reliance, right? As individuals, we have to almost always question the narrative and things like that. Not necessarily in a negative way and assume that everyone's lying, but you have to assume that there is a little bit of manipulation going on in whatever system you're involved in, whether you're going to the doctor or anything like that. You almost have to question, like, okay,
just be curious.
Yes, be curious. Yeah, do additional research.
Be aware that not everything is as it seems. Be curious about it. Ask questions. Does this make sense? Is this how it should be? Like, how many times does something that we get presented with make no sense?
Well, as soon as you get in it, I went back to my car analogy. I mean, how many times do you just, like, take the mechanic's word for it? Or, like, no, okay, what part is this? Okay, like, okay, really? Like, let me go get a second. And then if you start, like, most of us just want to get it done and quick, over with. Like, whatever the first guy says. But if you actually go get a second assessment on your car or vehicle, I bet you you're going to evaluate it completely differently. So medicine, I can only freaking imagine.
Yeah. Well, and you can get a second opinion and stuff in medicine, but the problem is you don't know how much it costs. If you want to drive down prices, it can't be that. Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine if you walked into Sam's Club and they had two TVs sitting there, and you were like, well, I think I want that one, and how much does it cost? They're like, we'll tell you when you check out. And you'd be like, wait, I'm trying to make an educated decision here. It's like the bigger, nicer TV happens to be cheaper than the smaller, shittier one. And you're like, well, why would I buy this one? It's like, sorry, that's what you picked. Like, you already did it, so we get paid after. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like, that TV is going to be cheaper, but you're going to have to replace it in 1 year. Yeah. 2 years, right? So you're going to keep
have no idea what the quality
along.
is. You have nothing in our society functions this way except medicine. Cars are a good example. Like the reason people buy Toyota and Honda is because they have a history of reliance and positive reviews and consumer reports, and how much time is spent on studying that. Mm-hmm. Not one little bit of time is spent on quality of outcome with this provider, quality of outcome with that provider, what it costs when you go here, what it costs when you go there. Let's just say you want to get an MRI. You want to get an MRI of your wrist. If you want to get that MRI at this facility or that facility, what's the quality of the MRI here? What's the quality of the MRI there? What is the experience like there? What's the cost here? What's the cost? You don't get any of that. They tell you, hey, go here and get your MRI. Done. Mm-hmm. You're not allowed to make educated decisions. People don't have to compete. There's no point in this hospital and this hospital getting any better. Yeah, you're just going to go there. Like, you have no freaking option, and you don't know any better. You don't know what they cost. You don't know what the quality is. It's like if you start making everyone compete, things get better.
I guess McDonald's was the only one. Think about it. That's the only way. But you can develop your own brand in a sense. It's going to be local for the most part, unless you're some fantastic surgeon
But you can't charge anymore.
Yeah, I guess that's the only part that you can actually do reviews like you traditionally would with everything you just mentioned. Like,
yes,
all right, this doctor's good, and I'm just gonna bank on him knowing he's got connections. He'll know the best way to do the surgery or recommend whatever medication I might need. But aside from that,
all that person's gonna get though is more work. They're not gonna get more money. So if you go in there and let's just say it's an ACL procedure. I'm the best in the world at doing an ACL reconstruction. Mm-hmm. And this person is the worst person in America. 2 surgeons. Best in the world, worst in America. When they do an ACL reconstruction, which every provider's active. People are busy. Best one and worst one are going to get paid the exact same amount of money from the insurance company. That is a flat rate. It doesn't change unless this person wanted to go out of pocket completely, that is the only way you could actually make extra money. Otherwise, the only way to make more money is to be more busy because you're getting flat rates. It's like, think of it like every time you see a patient, you get $100. How do you make more money? It's not getting better. It's by seeing more people. It's the only way you can make more money.
If you own your own private practice in a sense, like spending less quality time with the patient and doing that small talk and how are you doing or what you just want
it's
rapid
all speed.
Fire.
If you want to make more money, it's all speed. It's not quality. You are not paid on quality. You could do so. Surgery is a great example. I've seen and worked.
So if you fuck up a surgery and they need to come back, it's like a double.
It's not the end of the world.
Hey,
and the faster you do
dip.
it, let's say you do a knee arthroscopy. If I do knee arthroscopies in 20 minutes versus 40 minutes. And it may require 40 minutes, but if I just do it really fast, in, out, done, I'm getting paid the exact same amount of money. And outcomes are going to be dramatically different. But guess what? I could have done 2 to 1. So I'm going to actually make twice as much money by doing them faster and worse.
So if you worked for yourself versus Cleveland Clinic, like your hourly rate would have been through the roof.
No, listen. Okay, so you told us a story, and you also had knowledge too. So you might be able to work faster than some people as well, right? So
that is a skill, but I'm not sure it's beneficial.
So I'm setting you up. How would you, when you worked in the industry?
Was I not supposed to say a name?
No,
it doesn't matter.
Were you able to run through more patients than most people?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
but it was of no benefit to me.
But you were more profitable from an employee standpoint
right.
to the
right.
Oh yeah, his revenue per hour was like triple the rest.
Right, and because I remember you told us one time the story about how some of the other PAs would get pissed because you would get done with work way earlier
that was
than
the
them
benefit for me.
because you were more productive.
Right.
Like they might have been lollygagging around, dicking around, but you were like, okay, I'm going to go in there, get through my patients, get everything done. I'm going to leave at 2:00. You guys are still here at 6:00.
Right.
And they were pissed at you.
Yeah.
But you were like, well, I'm billing way more hours than you guys. I'm doing a way better job than
I think
you
that
guys.
goes down. You should almost if I was organizing like a business, like I would almost leave it up to my patient because as a patient, I want to get in and out.
Yeah,
too. I don't want the small talk.
I agree.
But like an elderly
There is
person,
some of that. Well,
they
it depends
want to,
on what you're
like,
doing too.
They want you asking about their grandkids and like, hey, like, what are you doing? Like, they might want 45 minutes. When I'm gonna want like 7 minutes, do what you need to do. I'm out.
Well,
I'm
and I
going
think
golfing.
that I think there's different types of medicine too. Like, if you're sitting there and injecting knees and shoulders all day, I don't know how much small talk is required. If you're treating someone with, brain cancer, that's not a 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's just different levels of what people do that require more time, and they don't really build that out. It's not like you can really have these discussions because then once you actually start to say, all right, like there are levels of visits. So you could say, I'm going to bill. There's 1 through 5. 1's like nothing. 5's like a really long one. And there's different levels of money, but to get to that level 4 or 5 is almost impossible. You almost never do it because the amount of documentation it requires to get that reimbursed by insurance is like insane. I mean, you'd spend 20 minutes just doing the note. So there's so much nonsense of that. It's fascinating.
And
if you don't know about it, it's fascinating, and it's like it's kind of depressing too, because when you're trying to do the correct thing, I think a lot of times you'll go to a provider and I think they just get burned out to a point where it's hard to do the right thing all the time.
Yeah,
it's difficult.
Towards the end of this conversation, I don't want to be doom and gloom. So we'll talk about some things people can do, right?
Yeah.
To stay out of the system. But another thing is when someone goes into a healthcare provider or a physician, whatever, and they have an issue, what I've noticed is that a lot of the doctors are trying to fix the symptom and not the root cause is another issue I've noticed.
Yeah.
So, for example, when I went in because I couldn't focus and I thought I had ADHD, I got described as ADHD based on this easy questionnaire to fill out. Let's be honest.
Well,
I knew what
it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, it was so dumb.
You know the answer they're looking
That's
for.
another issue.
It's like getting your marijuana medicinal card nowadays.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I got PTSD from COVID.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I went in there, easily filled it out, and boom, here's your ADHD medication, Vyvanse. And it was essentially like speed is what it basically is.
Long release
I
speed.
essentially got off of it at some point, but the reason I was able to get off of it and feel fine was because what I noticed is over the years that I was on that Vyvanse, I actually fixed the underlying issues that I had. What were my issues that I could have solved at the beginning, or I would have wished the doctor had recommended that I try, was getting better sleep, eating a little bit healthier, make sure you're working out and moving more. I fixed all 3 of those things during that time I was on Vyvanse. So when I got off, I thought to myself, oh, well, I'm fine.
Don't need it.
Now, don't get me wrong. That drug was amazing. It was like that movie Limitless. You felt like freaking Superman. But it worked, and I always tell you guys this, it worked way too well. It worked too well to where I noticed when I was on them, I was void of certain emotions. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel super happy. I was my state was just like wah, and I got to the point where I missed emotions. I craved feeling sad and giving a shit about certain things. So
I get it.
It was awesome because I was so productive, but after getting off of it, I think to myself, holy shit. That can't be good over a long period of time. No. So I wonder if when you go in to get these types of issues figured out, why aren't they trying to fix the root cause?
They don't have time.
Okay.
There's not enough time. They have in recent, and this is across any, I mean, there's certain problems that there's not a root cause. So let's just say you got some sort of a brain tumor or something. Like something that's just
there's certain things
of no fault, like it just is what it is. But if you look at many orthopedic problems. Their overuse, their weight, diabetes is weight related. A lot of this stuff is just, there's an underlying cause that you could treat that would make a lot of things better. But they don't have the time to sit there for an hour and a half and go over everything with you. There are these newer clinics that are popping up, and even at some of the major hospitals in integrative medicine, functional medicine, they're getting into this.
But it's not as widespread functional
really
medicine
hard to
as
get into.
Yeah,
they're really hard to get into. I've been to it with my wife, and I mean, like I think the first visit was like 2 hours, and it was like legitimately like going through your childhood and your trauma,
which is what you would
expect. What you should do. It's good, and they're out there. So like that is the thing where I'm like, if more resources are shifted to that and more providers go to that, and like, yeah, you could kind of get to the bottom of some of the stuff instead of just right now. It's you come in, you have hypertension. Okay, here's a drug for hypertension. Go away. Like that's 10 minutes.
Fix the symptom.
Yeah, you're not treating the fact that, well, yeah, but then that's also going to turn into heart disease. It's going to turn into other problems down the road, kidney problems, because you didn't really address the fact that, oh, well, this person's just in terrible shape. They're overweight. They never work out. They eat terrible food. It's like, oh, yeah, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm. It's like you're constantly playing whack-a-mole,
and you're never going
to and throwing drugs at the symptom,
and the drugs then make problems.
Yeah, because
there's no free lunch.
Mixing a bunch of substances.
It happens all the time. The polypharmacy is what it's called, where you get just way too many drugs on board. And then a lot of times you'll be treating one drug's problem with another drug. The craziest one I ever saw was the opioid stuff. When it was really bad, there was a drug that was made specifically for opioid-induced constipation. So I'm like, you're taking so many freaking opioids that you're constipated, and it is a real problem. You get very constipated on those drugs. And then you have to then take a opioid specific laxative essentially to help you take a dump. I'm like,
why
this is so crazy.
Like, it dehydrates you, or like
it actually slows down the gut motility, so you don't move things through nearly as fast. They like, if you get bad enough, yeah, very fancy. But you'll have people that have they'll get like something called toxic megacolon, where they literally will have their colon explode because they're on so many opioids. That's the thing. Like there's so many problems with so many drugs.
The gut is so fascinating. I told you I took that magnesium pill, just one. It was like my shit just flowed out. It was like beautiful. I was like, hell yeah. So I'm trying to like build some more magnesium or fiber into my diet. Shitting is like, when you shit clean, it's like, everything
amazing.
Feels better.
Well, imagine those poor opioid people until they got this magical drug that helped them.
The medicine. But just think though, everything we just talked about, it kind of starts like with your childhood, and that's where it needs fixed. Like what we used to say, shove something, you got whatever, and it's like, hey, take this drug, move on, get out of here. That's what parents do with their kids. Like, hey, here's video games. Mm-hmm. And like, there's McDonald's is easier. It really starts there. Mm-hmm. We gotta somehow get kids like at the very young age, like living differently. Otherwise, we're all gonna, well, not all of us. I mean, we all decide to live different lives, but you end up in your 20s, 30s being obese and like shitty, and then it's like now you're in the healthcare system, and this is what's gonna happen.
Yeah, once you're in, it's hard to get out.
We've talked about all like negative things, so let's move it to positive. Try to think about some solutions and things like that.
Yeah.
So number one, I would say,
just be educated.
Well, number one, if you do have to go to the doctor, look for a what type of doctor? A functional
integrative medicine are a good place to start for
ideally
primary care kind of issues.
And understand that it's going to take it's not going to go as quick as a normal doctor.
No, but
right?
you might actually solve the problem.
That's the whole point of it.
Yeah.
So number one, it's like try to go the route of functional medicine if you possibly can.
And a lot of that is going to be diet, exercise, proper supplementation. A lot of what they do is that.
In functional medicine, can you use insurance or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
So then I guess second, it would be like ask the provider, hey, if I pay for this out of pocket, because let's say you have to get the treatment no matter what, you have insurance, and then you also have a little bit of cash on the side. We'll say $10,000 of like an emergency fund that you've set aside for this sort of thing. When you go to pay, can you say, hey, what's the price with and without insurance?
Absolutely. Okay. You can haggle.
So that's number two is see what the price is with and without insurance and try to negotiate that price down a little bit more, right? And this is if you have to go to the doctor. for anything. Really, I mean, I would say do it for anything just to build that skill up of negotiating that sort of thing and feeling comfortable asking the question. Because, normally you'd go to the desk, here's my card, just pay for it, get the heck out of there because I don't want to be here. Number one, it's like be patient with your health and understand that
unless it's an emergency.
If you want to truly understand what is wrong, it's going to take a little bit of time. Yeah, you might have to be out of work for 2 hours instead of 30 minutes. But that's okay because it's your health, which is something that we all got to pay
and if you're
attention
doing
to.
an elective procedure, medication, whatever that's going to be, it's not unreasonable at all to get a second opinion either. Like, if you go to 2 different people, you're probably going to get 2 different answers.
Yeah.
And the thing is, then educate yourself. So you go in and you say, hey, this person suggested this. What do you think? And they may say, I don't really think you need that procedure. I think we could try, physical therapy and weight loss and see how you do, or something like that. There are other options. It's not like just because someone tells you something, they call it practicing medicine for a reason, because a lot of times you're going to get different answers from different people, depending on what that person's like.
Which is probably a good thing because
It's not a bad thing.
everyone's health is completely different because us as individuals are completely different.
It's not a bad thing. And understand that, but a lot of times if you have X diagnosis, you're going to get treatment based on a path that has been given to them by an insurance company. And the more you can get out of that model, I think is good. I think if you could say, hey, I'd like to find providers and be kind of out of that model where I'm not always paying, and I get it, some people can't do that. But if you can pay cash for things and kind of just control your own destiny a little bit, I think it's beneficial for you if you could do it.
Yeah. So I would say, tell individuals to plan on having a little bit of money set aside so that you can have the option to do these sort of things. I don't think what people realize is that when you're constantly living paycheck to paycheck, you are just at such a disadvantage because you can't do very much. But if you have even just a little bit of cash set aside for these sort of things, you can make decisions, the right decisions that you would prefer to do. For example, when I was working for Goodyear, they were talking about there was talks, they didn't do it, but if people weren't vaccinated, then you would get fired. There was talks about that. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, shit. Okay, I'm just going to quit. Yeah. I'm not getting vaccinated based on my health and my age and things like that. I don't need to get vaccinated. So I thought to myself, if I was living paycheck to paycheck, I'd be screwed.
No, you'd be a prisoner of it.
But because I have a bunch of cash set aside, I could be like, F you, I'm out of here. Like, I'm just going to quit. If you're going to mandate that sort of thing. But so you have to have a little bit of a cash cushion to be able to do that sort of thing.
Yeah. You need to not be enslaved to something, whatever that may be, that no matter what, that they decide everything for you.
Yeah. And even just, like I said, even just a little bit of a buffer, like a few $1,000s is, you're living in a whole different realm than someone living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, so that's number one, if you have to go to the doctor. Number two, nutritional health.
Your best bet is to avoid medicine at all costs.
Try to for as long as possible. Try to stay out of the system for as long as possible.
The longer you avoid it, the better you'll be. No doubt about it. And there are things, there's emergencies, there's injuries, there's all sorts of things that you can't control that are out of your hands. Yeah. But there are things that are in your hands. And that would be keeping an appropriate weight, eating well, and doing proper supplementation.
And you don't even have to eat super healthy all the time. It's like, if you get it right
most of the time.
Yes, if you get it right 80% of the time,
you're probably pretty good.
Yeah, binge out at 20% of the time.
And that stuff's out there versus what it was like even 10 years ago. The data on how to eat, what to eat, these sorts of things, it's so available. So it's one of those things where it's like you really don't have an excuse. If you're eating poorly all the time now, that's on you. Like, you're making that decision. And people will act like, oh, it's expensive. No, it's not. It's not. It's not expensive to go buy a bag of beans and a bunch of eggs.
Yeah, if you get the right healthy, nutritious food, you won't eat as much. It's that addictive food is that way for a reason. You continually binge.
Designed it that way.
Yes, more and more. That's why it tastes so delicious. Yeah. And a lot of it is processed food, and some of these even shitty oils that they use, these seed oils they put in food, that is contributing to obesity a lot.
Yeah. The more you could just avoid anything that is in a box. Yeah. I mean, you're good. Get stuff, meat, cheese, get any vegetable, any fruit, like anything that didn't need to be like done anything more than pick and harvest. Like, that's what you want.
And there's tools for this too. Like, I have an app that I scan a barcode and it will tell me whether it's called Bobby approved. Then it'll tell me whether something is Bobby approved. And it highlights the ingredients and tells you like, hey, this is a really bad seed oil or ingredient. So you can decide, okay, if all of the ingredients are highlighted red, don't get it. If maybe one is, okay, you might be able to get away with it. But so tools like that, I'll link it up in the description. So that's one tool.
Yeah.
Okay, number 2, I would say physical health. That's number 2.
Got to move.
Yeah, and I don't think it has to be thinking about getting like super jacked and big, but I think healthy strength, having a little bit of muscle on you, not a whole bunch, but to build even strong bones is extremely important.
Yeah, and 100%. And I've seen resistance training now as like that is the premier way to do it. And I can just tell you from experience, the people that were older that lifted weights more, did more resistance training than like cardio. And you can get cardio from walking. You just need to get your heart rate up. And if you walk, you can get that. But a lot of the impact running, that kind of stuff, it can be hard on joints. And so a lot of the people would have trouble with that. So no, I would say resistance training is number 1. Like do weights. Weights is the most important.
But if you have to start out, it's like just stick with body weights because some people body weight because some people are super out of shape. They shouldn't be touching bars or
like I got really skinny legs, so just like squatting my body weight is fine.
Yeah, yes, that's really good. If you almost have to have those.
Do 30 squats of your body weight. Like
no, if you
fine.
could base an awesome workout off if you can actually do a pull-up. A lot of people can't do pull-ups, but if you can incorporate pull-ups or like those resistors that'll take like half your body weight away to kind of make it easier, push-ups and like the kind of using triceps like for your own body weight and then body squats.
Yeah,
you could be jacked.
You could be very jacked, and you get your nutrition in
good
order.
Lean looking,
so jacked.
Yeah, and you're avoiding all the chronic disease that occurs when you don't have physical activity and poor nutrition.
To the pull-up.
It always makes me feel pathetic though when I do body squats and I do like 30 of them and like I'm actually really sore or like or lunges, same thing. I do like 90 lunges like once or twice a week. Oh my god, the next day, like no matter how often I do them, the next day, like getting into my car, I'm like, woo! I just kind of fall down.
It ain't easy. No, and that's the thing. It's totally adequate.
Oh.
And you do that, then you go walk a mile. Like your heart rate's up.
Yeah.
Do that 4 times a week.
Yeah, even
see how much better you feel.
Walking lunges, dude. I would go to the park and I would do 3, 4, 5,000 walking lunges at once. This is back when I was running all those Spartan races. But what was funny is my body weight percentage. I didn't change my nutrition or anything. I just increased the amount of times I was doing walking lunges. My body fat percentage decreased by like 1.5 percentage. It was insane, but it is tough when you start to do walking.
Always
lunges.
eating the same. You're checking your.
I was at that point in time. Everything was the same. I was doing a bunch of tests on myself. It was fucking stupid. I'm a weirdo. But anyways,
you were like Ivan Drago. Like you had a bunch of hookups.
Pretty much. I would go out to the park with sandbags and I would do walking lunges. I have videos of it because I was documenting my life for a year. So I have a lot of it on video. But anyways, okay, so that sort of thing. Even like kettlebells. I tell people kettlebells are the best.
Great
The
exercise.
only room you need for kettlebells is put your arms out and go in a circle. That's how much room you need. You could do it in a freaking closet. Kettlebells are amazing. You have to, I would say, first master body weight and then move to kettlebells because you can still screw yourself up by using kettlebells if you don't know how to properly move with them. Okay, so physical exercise. You don't even have to do a lot, but just make sure, right, body weight stuff. Push-ups, sit-ups, air squats, things like that.
The other one is then, so nutrition, exercise, and then supplementation.
Okay.
I do think that's one where it gets hairy because, number one, there's some that aren't high quality, some that are. There's some things they tell you that are good, some things that are bad, and they'll flip-flop. And so it's like, I think
what's the one like B11 or something that's like not really available in like foods in general? Or am I
B12.
wrong? B12.
But and you store that up. You store that up in your liver, and it lasts for a long time. So I mean,
What about if you drink a lot? Should you take more supplements?
You should probably drink less. But a good multivitamin. That's like day one stuff. When you start to get into the other things, fish oil. Mm-hmm. Fish oil is one that's just been like proven over and over. You're like, all right, they should put that in the water. Turmeric, another one. And it has
anti-inflammatory is
very good anti-inflammatory. Most of the problems that we see chronically are inflammatory problems. That includes cancer, whatever. There's a lot of things related to that. So you got to get it with 95% curcuminoids or better, and it has to have black pepper to absorb properly. So that's...
I eat a lot of black pepper. That's good.
Yeah.
Hey, spell turmeric.
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 See, there's a bunch of people out there. Well, the 5 people that watch this,
Yeah,
they're probably like me.
Yeah. Well, and then so the other one would be vitamin D.
I was gonna say, okay.
So especially anywhere in northern climates, you got to have vitamin D because there'll be like 6 months where you don't have any. So those 3 are ones where they're not fringy. There's other ones that are way more fringy, but multivitamin, those 3, you did that, you could probably do it for $25 to $30 a month.
Yeah.
It's not going to cost a ton, and like, all right, I'm getting at least the basics. And you can get way deeper than that, but that's when you start to get into like specific things.
Yep. Vitamin D specifically, I started taking that 4 or 5 years ago because I noticed that I got a little seasonal depression in the wintertime in Ohio. It was awful. Then I started taking that, and I felt so much better.
Yep.
Really?
Yes.
I always feel like it's just because I'm not outside, like breathing in fresh air.
You really don't have vitamin D. You really don't.
Well,
Like you can't absorb it that time of year. You
That'd
just
be a
will
good
get
test
none.
for me because I'm not a huge supplement guy, but
Vitamin D is one that we should all take.
Yeah, I take that every day.
It's too easy to
I get
take.
a little
and it's cheap.
irritable in the winter more than normal. Because I always figured it's like, Jesus, it's dark when you kind of get up and get going, and it's dark when you're like kind of wrapping up your traditional work.
Because your body relates sunlight to vitamin D. I mean, it
should
knows
get
what it wants.
a little bit of sunlight even if it's overcast, your skin should have some sort of outside light.
You know what's a
on it.
really funny side note on that I just learned? It's super interesting. The other way you can get vitamin D is infrared light, and one of the ways that was really common to get infrared light. Can you take any guesses?
The other infrared light.
Yeah, that
Tanning
you would use
bed?
in a house commonly 100 years ago. A fire.
Oh.
So it kind of explains like why that we've seen a decrease, because we now heat our homes in a completely different way, and we also have UV protection on almost every single window. So you went from hitting UV lights with fires, outdoor fires, UV light through windows. All of that is now basically gone. So we've kind of gotten away from it.
Yeah.
And that limits the vitamin D production.
Name one human that you know that doesn't like sitting around a bonfire. It's just like
Yeah.
inherent
It's built in
us.
you.
True.
It's built in you. And
Yeah.
why?
You wanna
You're
be around
getting
that fire.
you're getting and the thing is, I think melatonin plays a role in that as well. There's many things that can play a role in that that UV light you get from that. So it's interesting.
A lot of people are wearing sunglasses too, right? Like
And
your
sunscreen.
Your eyes need some sort of light in them, so maybe not wearing sunglasses as often as you do.
There's a definite there's an overdone, I think even more than sunglasses is sunscreen. But yeah, no, it's one of those things, man.
All right, so then one more thing to wrap it up is, I would say, the other health thing you should pay attention to is your mental health as well. I think that's important because I think the mind and body is separate, if you will. So while, working out will help improve your mind and your mental health, I think, working on your mental health and making sure that you're good, and if you need to go talk to a psychologist or a therapist or whatever, then it's like, okay, go talk to those people. Maybe try to improve the way you're thinking about things.
Yeah, and there's a million resources with that now that are outside of insurance. I mean, you can do that stuff online. So, yeah. No, it's another one.
Instead of just throwing medication, I guess is what I'm thinking at when it comes to mental health. Like just thinking that you need some sort of medication to fix your mental health, when in reality, maybe it's just a change in how you're looking at the world or something
There's
like
so
that.
much
Does
of
that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, there's so much of that where there's so much where we just want the quick fix.
Yeah.
And it doesn't exist.
Yeah. It takes time. And we almost think of, having any kind of like mental health issue as a bad thing, or there's something wrong with me. It's like, no, you're just a human. Like that's just,
and you might be in a rut.
yeah, that's just part of the
It might
human
be a
experience.
2-month rut. And maybe that rut goes away, but if you start medicating yourself for it, you'll never know.
Thanks for checking out this podcast. Please make sure to hit that thumbs up button before you go. If you want to watch us continue the conversation, then click on this video to your left next.